Let's talk about the status of AI, something I want to revisit from time to time, as it just seems to be growing so quickly. This week, I had the chance to go to Human X. It's one of the largest AI conferences in the world. At the same time as the conference, there were some dramatic developments in the AI world itself. One AI company said they had invented something so powerful they couldn't even release it to the public. And another AI founder's house was firebombed. Inside the conference, I had a lot of conversations with tech company founders, and here's kind of a few of the topics that I landed on, a few observations from the outside here. What I kept hearing is that these are early days in AI, but it is beyond the gee, isn't this interesting phase. I mean, it is now in a phase where every tech company is either using AI robustly or trying to find a way to do so. And in some cases, I was told that, well, investors are really pushing them to get AI as part of the picture so they can get more money and more investors, and perhaps before it's even mature enough to do so. Operationalize was the buzz phrase. Another conversation, nobody knows where all this is going. Nobody. Al Gore, the former vice president, was there. He said that some of these AI models have achieved sentience, meaning they know where they are, they know that they exist, a sort of rudimentary phase of consciousness. And one other observation, despite this company's sign that seems to be discouraging the hiring of humans, it's of course a marketing ploy, I found there actually to be a lot of talk about ethics and humanity and trying to find a way to include humans in the process as AI continues to develop at lightning speed. Tess Robinson, founder, investor, deeply embedded into the tech world, the producer of this podcast, joins us now. And Tess, a lot of dramatic developments. Let's start with Sam Altman. It looks like it's early for us right now. We're still trying to figure out what the motive was, but it looks like not everybody's happy with AI right now. I mean, we're talking about a firebombing of his home, and then a couple of days later, somebody fired shots.
Yeah, it's a little wild out there for seemingly Sam specifically, which is the interesting part. They're going directly at his home. That's really scary and terrifying, and it's totally uncalled for. It's just really something that's sad to hear about, and not sure why anyone would decide to do that. But whatever it is, why here or there. Um, Hopefully, it's not the beginning of some other actions that we see. And I don't know if it's something more, right? When you think about these people that are now leading these companies, OpenAI is a very large, prominent company in the AI space, and Sam, as the head of this company, is becoming more than just a CEO. You're normally a CEO of a company. You don't expect to be this targeted person, but I think with something so ethically charged, as AI, maybe it's something that could take a little differently.
Yeah, and there's a lot of folks out here who are creeped out by AI, who feel helpless about it, and who can dwell on the negative, and understandably so. I mean, the American news media, which I was a part of for a long time, tend to dwell on the negative. But really, there is a lot of anxiety, and some of it is real. I mean, the jobs, the ethics, the concern about contracts with the Pentagon, all of that's real.
I think the biggest thing kind of coming out of this is thinking about who's regulating. If there's no one regulating this industry, then it's left for the companies themselves to regulate, which is how we found ourselves with the OpenAI Anthropic back and forth with the government contract, right? I mean, there's been a lot going on. And so I think it's just left to be seen. There's not a lot of precedent with this industry still.
Yeah, it's early to talk about regulation because, frankly, I don't think Congress has the wherewithal to quite understand it. Or for that matter, most of us don't quite understand it yet. But I mean, you mentioned Anthropic. The other big development was that they've announced that there's something called Mythos, which is a security model that they've deemed so powerful that they're not going to release it to the public. Now, on the one hand, yay, if it's going to destroy the security for everything, good. It seems like that's a good thing to protect us all. On the other hand, when you say you're not going to release something to the public, it begs a lot of questions about transparency and just how powerful these things are.
Yeah, I think that's the one starting point is to just mention, questions about transparency and, how transparent do they need to be? Depending on the company structure, there's not a requirement for a company to be transparent. It is possibly a good thing that you could look at, like you mentioned, that they've decided to self-regulate and not release something. This is a little insight kind of scratching the surface with a security model that is shown that it's very powerful. And yeah, for them not to release it, I think this is kind of ties back to, the whole government contract, the whole operational status that you see, this very different operating mechanism between Anthropic and OpenAI.
I mean, bottom line, they've discovered something very powerful that it could breach security at a level we're not really sure of. It has learned how to exploit security vulnerabilities in computer systems, and that's enough for me. Is okay, yeah. Let's not release that yet till we figure out what to do with that. Although, I mean, you have to think there are folks who are trying to get rich who may not have a conscience, who are just salivating to figure out how they could figure this out.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go from here.
Well, now let's talk about the Human X conference. It was fascinating. More than 6,000 people there, a lot of businesses, small businesses, tech companies. The thing that really grabbed my attention was something that I've just been contemplating. Like, where are we right now? I hear the words potential. I hear in the future we'll be able to do this kind of stuff. And my journalist brain goes off and says, wait, but what are we able to do now? And whereas no one seems to have a great answer to that, I would say it sort of falls in this category of, well, it's gotten off the ground. AI is definitely in place. It's working for many companies. It's certainly organizing. It's doing a lot, but it has a long way to go. The other interesting aspect of this was that investors are telling tech companies, figure out how to use it, get it in as part of the program. As an investor yourself, explain that to us. Like investors are putting pressure on these companies to use AI when AI hasn't quite matured to a level in some cases yet to actually use it on a daily basis.
It's interesting. I did not make that conference, and I was hoping to have been able to do that one. But I'm glad you got in and got to bring us all the juicy details on this topic from an investment point of view. However, I did recently, just a couple days ago, partake in a panel, Plug and Play, and I was on the panel with some other investors from Plug and Play, someone that's affiliated with Stripe, very, very good quality other investors. And we were talking about valuations and how to evaluate a company that's, using an AI company, let's call that like an AI company. When you're an investor, and you're, especially at the early stage, you're looking for people that are operating, in the future. And so you have to be an early adopter. You have to be a contrarian thinker. And you should be one of the first early adopters and users of it. And so in that point, we're not going to give, so the statement I made on this panel was, we're not going to give you an extra valuation for using the internet, because of course you use the internet. So that's where we're at with AI. I'm not going to give you an extra valuation for using AI, because if you're not using it, it doesn't make sense.
That's how much pressure. But I did get the sense that, look, it's still maturing. It's not where it will be. And so some of these companies are saying, okay, here's how we're using AI. But it seemed to me that maybe they're exaggerating the effect that they're using it now, that they hope to get there someday, but it's not quite helping them as much as they'd like it to yet.
Well, I mean, it's gonna continue to evolve. I think one of the big things is how they use it versus if they're using it. There's a lot of it that, like I mentioned, that's why I think it's very big to differentiate the fact that you should be using something. There's so many tools out there. There are so many things like that we can use. I use in my day to day, and so that's the concept there. Especially when you're talking about an investor that's here in the valley. If you're talking about someone that's maybe not as tech forward, or maybe potentially just a different person, they might not be as tech savvy and using it as much as I am. But if I'm using it in my day to day, if I'm using it to streamline my calendar, if I'm using it to streamline my processes, if I'm using it as a tool, and I think we talked about this before in another episode, right? Like AI isn't necessarily a human replacement, right? It is an augmentation. And so it's a tool. The hammer is not going to take over where you nail. You are going to, instruct the hammer where to nail. And that's a similar idea. Now, yes, we can get into some nuances of how intelligent and the agents are now, orchestrator agents controlling other agents. And it is a little more nuanced than just, your hammer and nails, but it's a tool. You should be using it.
And so they're finding ways to use it. And yet, as anyone who knows who has used ChatGPT, it's deeply flawed still. And then, but it makes those mistakes at supersonic speed. And so, it's training us on how to quickly go to the second, third draft of whatever it is we're trying to accomplish. So it's an interesting moment where, it's not, are you using it? To what degree are you using it? How are you using it? Another topic of conversation was the consciousness of AI, the sentience. And I suppose as a differentiation, but since Al Gore, the former vice president, brought it up, I think it's something anyone who's thought about this entire industry has contemplated, right? At what point will these AI beings become actual conscious beings, or are they just sentient? Are they somewhere in between? And so sentient, as I understand it, it's sort of, understanding that you exist to some degree. Maybe some animals have, less sentience than humans. They don't have consciousness. It's sort of a foo-foo conversation at some point, but it's a fascinating one, right? And to what degree will they get this consciousness if they achieve it? And when will they become our robot overlords?
Yeah. Okay. So this is like cue Terminator and like insert, right?
Right, right, right.
This is something that I actually get asked about a few times, and especially with investing and being in the health wellness space, because with healthcare and dealing with people, it's a big concern of having an computer. Let's just call it that. It's code on a computer that's basically going through an algorithm of um, deciding a decision tree, right? So if you think about realistically what it is, if you break it down in kind of a really simple way, is it's a decision tree on an algorithm. And then it uses data to kind of predict what would be a likely response or how someone would prefer to respond, or data that shows more positive responses. That is at the root, bare, bare bones, zeros and ones. Okay, very black and white. That's a computer, black and white. And when it comes to humanity, when it comes to being human, when it comes to making decisions on a human's life, you make decisions that are sometimes textbook wrong or data driven, not what you would do because you have that gut feeling, right? We've talked about it, we felt it, that gut feeling. And that's something that I don't believe a computer will ever be able to create. You're never going to be able to have a gut feeling from a computer. It's going to have a lot of data. It's going to have a lot of, and it's going to have an idea. It's going to predict what would be a response, but it's not going to be able to make that gray area decision. At the end of the day, it's going to kick it back to a human. And there's always going to be that need for a human to make that final deciding factor, especially, when you talk about the ethics of human life and those kind of things.
I mean, yet there have been already some sort of cracks in that where in some cases when they ran some tests and the AI thought maybe its survival was at stake, then it even resorted to trying to blackmail the boss. Like that's not exactly comforting. But is that human behavior? I don't know. It's some sort of it's some sort of behavior that is not just a computer as we've known it all this time.
Yes and no. So what you have is again an algorithm, right? And you have, like you mentioned, being autonomous, and autonomous and sentience are different things. And so this is the big, in my opinion, this is my opinion. The Terminator issue is that statistically and algorithmically, if you look at it, humans are not good for like the planet. Like when you break down the actual data points, right? And if you look at the history and you look over the years of mass destruction, mass murder, the wars, the things that we do to one another, and you remove all of the other things out of it, again, that gray area, that human feeling, when you look at it through a lens that a computer would, very rational, right? Very 0, 1, very black and white. It makes no sense. Why would you destroy the planet that's keeping you alive, right? When you put yourself and you think about it from that way, you can understand a little bit why, you know, a robot would look at you and decide you're probably not the best person to make choices for something.
But I'm about the survival of humanity more than the survival of the planet. It's a close second, I suppose. But well, at this point, I get it. I can see why anyone would be confused at just looking at humanity from any sort of logical angle.
Exactly. I mean, have you seen the meme where the aliens go by Earth and they're like, oh, we don't go there. That's like the crazy place, or it's like Earth is the reality TV show that the aliens watch. And like, I mean,
I completely understand that. Well, I mean, maybe AI is smarter than us in that regard, but I will say that I did think many of the companies were trying to do the right thing, or at least they're talking about it. They're talking about the humanity. They're talking about how put people first. They're talking about it. I mean, and then companies have boards, and these decisions are based on: are we going to save money? Are we going to make money? Or are we going to do the right thing? It's people care about humanity, but these are business people.
well, I mean, I think what you just kind of said is a big part of what we need to work toward, and you see this a little bit. We don't need a monopoly, right? We don't want a monopoly of this technology, so we don't really want, or we don't just want Anthropic and OpenAI. Like that's not, we don't want that to be it, and that's why it is so important for more people to be involved, more diversity of people. No matter the program, whether you're on Anthropic or OpenAI, they're both skewed, a little bit when it comes to data. And you ask them to describe people, if you don't give it very specific instructions, it will definitely kick out a very specific type of person. And that might not look like you. And that's where it's important that we have the different voices, the smaller companies, the small businesses, people involved in trying it, using it, creating things. And one of the other things that's pretty interesting is this concept right now too. We talked about the LLMs, Anthropic, OpenAI, large language models earlier a little bit, but there's also this. So we have this like maybe 1.5, 2 years ago is all about the LLMs, and there were actually companies trying to create their own LLMs, and we were like, you have to have so much money, you have to have so much to try to compete with OpenAI, Anthropic. And so then it went away from that. And now we're kind of seeing this condensed versions happening, which we're calling now SLMs, small language models. And so instead of having one big model trained on all of this stuff, you have a very specialized model that's very, very specific and trained in this data set. And I think that you're going to see a lot more models like that and tools like that come out. So that way they're very niche industry, vertical specific, and really that way also a lot more efficient.
Yeah, for example, a friend of mine's a lawyer, and she said that every now and then a junior lawyer brings her something, and she says, "This doesn't add up," and I've never heard of that particular case, and I think maybe this was made up. Pushes it back, but some of those things are slipping through and getting to judges, of course. But so yeah, if they had this small language model as you describe it, now it can just work within the universe of cases that are actually fed into it, of actual law cases. Then right, and LexisNexis and the other things that lawyers use, and nothing outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the internet, like how, and this is the thing that's scary, right? There are people who still believe Wikipedia is true. Garbage in, garbage out. Whatever the majority, whatever data the model gets in, that's what it's going to use, and that's where you end up with these hallucinations.
Tess Robinson, thank you for taking the time to explain so much of this. It's moving so fast. You have some of the answers, and we are answering AI the best we can. Thanks for going on this journey with us.